What's Oklahoma going to do in the portal? They still got guys on their radar that they're trying to bring in and land. We'll discuss that coming up next year on Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks again for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there tuning in, subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free to, and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube, so hit that subscribe button over there. Jay, let's first talk about the most recent miss for Oklahoma. Lance Mason, who Oklahoma was pursuing at tight end, ended up picking Wisconsin. Now that comes after the Koziel kid, who was the Bowling Green tight end, or Ball State, one of those two. I can't remember.
Ball State went to Wisconsin and transferred out of Wisconsin. Yes, and
then he went to Houston. And so you were pursuing Lance Mason out of Missouri State. He ends up going to Wisconsin instead. What's your reaction to that, Jay?
Oklahoma needs to show us that a tight end can get some statistics here before we expect a tight end to come here. Granted, you just picked up 3 tight ends out of the transfer portal. You lost one of your top ones who had a lot of things going on in his life. I saw a article potentially talking about he answered saying that, he was struggling with adjusting as well as dealing with some family stuff. So nothing good happened to you in the tight end room. I mean, you moved Jer'Michael over there, who played a ton of offense when he was at high school up there in Kansas and hates Kansas. So the expectation is his 4.4 speed will lead to him actually doing some things. I don't know, but I'll say this, John. Until Oklahoma actually produces something at tight end, don't expect no tight ends to come here like that. Now, if this coming season, Ben Arbuckle finds a way to integrate the tight end where they can put up enough numbers, you should be fine. But we are all now suffering from the sins of the last set of coaches on this team. Unfortunately, Jeff Lebby did not leverage the tight end that much for you to get much out of it. And in last season, as much as Joe John Finley tried to get the ball to the tight end as much as possible, and sometimes to a fault, it didn't help you.
Yeah. And
so Mason had a chance of probably walking in and being your top receiving tight end, but if you can make something happen with Huggins as well as Carson Kent, as well as John Locke, and get some of those young pups in the back to potentially give you something, heck, if you slide Trinae Washington, who, if you want me to be honest, find a way to get that kid on the field. He's very athletic. He can catch. Figure out a way to get Washington on the field. I think you'll be fine. But that's really all you've got going for yourself right now. I wouldn't even you can pursue him, see if you can sweet talk one to show up. But your best bet is really to do that. Make the guys in the house work best, especially at Trinae Washington.
Yeah, I think of the guys that you have, Trinea's got the most upside. He's got the highest ceiling simply because of his athleticism. Now, he's going to have the blocking thing that he has to figure out, and that's always a big transition for everybody when they make that jump from high school to college ball, because going from blocking a dude at Carl Albert to trying to block a SEC edge in the run game is a little bit different, right? Now, hopefully, Ben Arbuckle's not asking tight ends to block SEC edges like Dylan Stewart in pass protection. Hopefully, we don't have to run down that road anymore. But it kind of goes back to everything I've been saying all offseason. If you can find a legit difference maker, a guy that is head and shoulders above what you've got on the roster, then by all means do it. Otherwise, just let the competition play out. You brought these 3 guys in for a reason. You like what they have to offer. Let that competition play out. Let Trinae Washington compete for snaps. Let Jer'Michael compete for snaps. And then just see where the chips fall. And if you have to do a tight end by committee position, and then you have to say, hey, look, this is what we were able to get out of our tight end room, 2 prospective tight ends. And listen, maybe Ryder Mix can be an answer down the road. He's part of your 2026 recruiting class. The kid's got some talent. He's a guy that can be a dual threat at tight end, a blocker and a receiver. But you've got to start developing him. You've got to start positioning yourself as a school that's able to develop tight end position. The Austin Stogner thing kind of set them back, because he came and he just wasn't quite right. But you remember, you got the Braden Willis situation. I mean, that's back in 2022. That was forever ago. But the dude did break out under Joe John Finley with Jeff Lebby at offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
but you haven't had anything consistent since then. So got to find a way to get consistent production out of the tight end position. And I think Bauer Sharp would have had a big year last year if anything else was going right for Oklahoma's offense, but nothing was going right. So that's kind of where it went. Now at wide receiver, the Sooners were after Keelan Marion, the BYU transfer that was getting looks from everywhere across the country, ended up going to Miami. Not necessarily a surprise there because this was going to be a big bag recruitment. And listen, if you're going up against Miami, a lot of times you're not necessarily going to win that recruiting battle. That's just the way it goes. But Oklahoma's still going after Jer'Michael Carter, who's somebody that is in Oklahoma's competing with Tennessee, Vanderbilt, some other SEC schools for, and he's one of those Louisiana wide receivers that went under the radar like a Giovanni Gibson, but flashed at McNeese State. They're also pursuing a Dekel Crowdus from Hawaii, who was formerly
Dekel Crowdus
out of Hawaii, was formerly of Kentucky, which shout out to him. Like if you're going to make a transfer move going from Lexington, Kentucky to Hawaii, like bro leveled up by dropping down a division in college football play, but he got to go live in Hawaii for a couple seasons. Shout out to him, or for at least a season. Shout out to Dekel. That was some next level thinking, my man.
Yeah, that's kind of smart to go out there and just, enjoy the fruits of the weather in Hawaii on somebody else's dime and, get housing and all of that stuff. But yeah, Oklahoma wants a wide receiver. This leads back to the same conversation we had not too long ago about like a Lance Mason and any other position. This is how I want y'all to think about it, fans. The players that we're going after, if it's a position or a player that we feel like will probably start, there's a good chance we're going to find a way to win their services. Perfect example. The main people on this team that we definitely went out, did what we need to do to bring them in, is John Mateer and Jay Knott. Guess what? That's your starting quarterback and your starting running back. Mm-hmm. You did that. You did that when you got in the portal.
Who's your starting right tackle?
Derek Simmons, starting right tackle. Oh, Marvin Jones Jr. He's your starting edge, most likely, while you're bringing up your young players. Wide receiver, tight end. Tight end, the big thing is you got so many of them, you don't know what's going to happen there. So probably players want to see what's going to happen. Same thing with wide receiver. If Giovanni Gibson and Jaden Gibson both show up at fall camp ready to go, they're most likely going to play Illinois State to get a little bit of warm up and then be ready for Michigan. Who's going to take that from them if they're ready? That's what you have to ask yourself in that question. That's the thing I had to ask myself when I thought about it, John. If you have healthy players in a Giovanni Gibson as well as a Jaden Gibson, healthy sounds like he's about at that point. Isaiah Satania, Deion Burks, Zion Kearney, right? I'm going down the list of all these wide receivers you got that most likely are going to play a lot of ball. Mm-hmm. If that's the case, it's a very slim chance that somebody else is going to walk in and take that unless we feel like it's a game-changing wide receiver, then we will pay for them. We're not paying for guys that we feel like will end up dropping to 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th in the depth chart. What sense does that make? You got young pups, you'd rather play them anyway.
Right.
So Jer'Michael is a good insurance policy for a Jaden Gibson situation. I don't know if he starts over Zion Kearney, but I do see him rotating in on a regular basis, but I don't think he starts over Zion Kearney. Mm-hmm. That's kind of where I look at this, and I take this mindset of the strategy we have is to make sure that if we're going to spend money on guys, they've got to be starting caliber. That's why you haven't seen us really get a corner either. Ain't really been no starting caliber corners that made sense for us. Because if Gentry and Eli are healthy and Kendall Dobie's healthy, guess what? That's your starters.
Yeah, it's you're not seeing Jim Nagy go after guys that are going to take reps from your young guys, that are going to take snaps in practice from guys that you're trying to develop. And I think that's the balance in the transfer portal is you don't want to live in the transfer portal. It just doesn't completely make sense. At the same time, you want to hit on a few spots, and they were able to do that. They've been able to hit and upgrade a few positions all offseason in the transfer portal. And then there's some that, hey, you want to just continue to develop your guys and you want to see what they've got. There's that year 2 jump. That is a legitimate thing. And we saw it from a Jaden Gibson, right? 2022, he was not really a whole lot to shake a stick at. Like, I think a lot of people were ready to run him out of town and process him out because of drops. 2023 comes around and the dude's averaging more than 20 yards per reception. It has something like 5 touchdowns on 13 receptions, something stupid kind of production. And unfortunately, the injuries really set him back, but the talent is noticeable. So you just got to give guys time. You got to give guys time to develop. And hopefully we get some kind of injury luck this year with a Deion Burks and as Isaiah Satania. And you've got your slot situation figured out with those two plus Jacob Jordan. So you're not having to go down to the second and third level on your depth chart at every single wide receiver position. If you have at least those two guys healthy, okay, the outside thing I think will figure itself out. But you got to have somebody healthy in your wide receiver room to kind of lead the way.
Got to have somebody healthy.
Yep, got to have somebody healthy. All right, the NFL draft came and went. What does it say about the Oklahoma Sooners? Not a whole lot of good. We'll discuss coming up next here on Locked On.